Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Today's video is, or rather this week's video, is going to be a continuation of the previous video, or last week's video, where I ranked the Bundesländer of Germany based on their livability. Today I'm going to do the same thing, but with every country in Europe. Or, okay, most countries in Europe, because it says here there are like 50. Pretty sure UEFA has 55 member states, though it also counts Kazakhstan as a member state as well as Israel, which which arguably don't count, but still I think it is a pretty good benchmark. There are also some arguments that it could be made that there are actually 40 something. So 50, if you actually consider it as a fair number. Given there are 50 to go through, I won't be able to go in as many details as I did with with the previous video where I discussed the Bundesländer. So instead, I'm just gonna breeze through all of them as quickly as I can to deliver what I want to deliver on each of them. And this is the tier ranking. We have S being the best, F being the worst. Though I rate, and given I rate on a curve, no, not this curve, this kind of curve. So expect the biggest clustering to be, around C tier. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get started with Albania. And I do have to admit, most of what I know about Albania is that it's poor and that it's run by mafiosi. Now, admittedly, some of that is just stereotypes. However, as someone who grew up in Romania, which also had some, very similar pronunciations made about itself, then I can, I quite clearly know what that is actually like. So I'm gonna say, yeah, I think D is a fair ranking at least to start. Andorra, a small principality between France and Spain in the Pyrenees. Well, I guess the landscapes are nice. Though admittedly, Albania probably has more of those as well, given that there are both mountains and a sea. Even though and Andorra only has mountains. Uh, Other things of note, well, basically its proximity. It's nestled between two highly developed countries, and it does maintain strong diplomatic, economic, and cultural ties to them. So the culture is likely to be quite similar, and roughly Mediterranean. So I'm gonna go with B. You know, for living conditions and all that. Armenia, I have seen some. I have seen some pictures of Armenia. Also, I should note I haven't visited all the countries. All the countries listed here. I'm going partly by their reputation, partly by my own experiences. And Armenia, as far as I've been able to see, is actually is actually a pretty place with a very long history. Some speculate that Armenia is actually the oldest country that has continuously existed. Though, admittedly, that title is a little bit disputed. I'm pretty sure Iran has a similar claim to fame. Um, however, even beyond that, there are plenty of aesthetics. Its real issue is that it's sandwiched between people who don't like it, and therefore it is a constant target. Still, for now, I'm gonna say C tier. Austria. Mm, very, it's very, it's another federal republic. Funnily enough, there's a surprising amount of those in Europe. It's let's see. It's got landscapes. Uh, it's got good transit. It's got Vienna. Uh, Beyond that, however, I really don't know what to think of it. I'm gonna So for now I'm just gonna stick it in not A. I'm gonna stick it in B under Andorra and figure it out later. Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is gonna be the first E, simply because it's a petrostate. Uh, any kind of governance that relies on where the economy relies on a specific on ownership of specific resources. Yeah, not a great choice. Also it involves itself in some shady dealings. So for that reason, E. Belarus also gets an E. You know, because it collaborates with Russia, partly because it keeps trying to flip flop between between being a ally of the West but an Eastern nation, and therefore it doesn't really inspire the confidence, so to speak. Belgium, technically also a federal republic, split between Flanders and Wallonia, with the city of Brussels itself also kind of being kind of being an equal state, even though there are plenty of points in which it is, plenty of points in which it is tied to, uh, to one or the other. I forget which. Still, still does have all of the features of a. So it has all the features of of a strong developed nation, and it served as one of the blueprints of the EU. So for that reason, I think it is fair to put it in A tier for now, at least. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Well, most of what I know about them is about their National Association football team being, having had a very strong high in the previous decade, and now going back down to where they usually are. And also it is another federal republic, but one of perhaps the weirdest federalization system that exists. So I guess it I guess that it actually deserves some kudos for specifically for that, for exciting political nerds, but or intriguing political nerds. And beyond that, however, I don't know. Can't think of anything else about them, so they get C tier. Bulgaria, I'm gonna say they also get C tier. Like, yeah, Romania and Bulgaria entered the European Union at about the same time. Bulgaria was arguably a little bit worse off than Romania, at least at least at the time. But they are making strides towards making things, towards improvements. Croatia, the EU's newest member state, I'm gonna say also goes in C tier. I don't know, uh, I don't know much about it otherwise, except that it keeps Bosnia and Herzegovina from having an Adriatic coast, uh, and also it has some ties to. Also, there are some. Yeah, let's just say the Yugoslav wars haven't exactly been conducive to it being uh, towards it being uh, stable and a stable nation. That being said, it still fares a little bit better than Cyprus, which for now I'm gonna put on the lower end of B. Uh, Given that half of it is actually part of an unrecognized country. There's also constant UN and British military presences, and also kind of functions as a tax haven. And countries with tax havens, they typically have they're typically very economically stratified. Again, not particularly stable, not particularly desirable. Pretty as it may be, it's not it's not nice there. Next up, we got the Czech Republic. I'm gonna put him in B, lower end of B, but still B. Not a lot of people know this, but Czech Republic, had the highest, or the largest amount of parental leave that was that was given worldwide. It has since shortened it, but even the shortened one is still the the longest parental leave that is that is given anywhere in the world. That is at least a little bit funny. And also, fun fact about Czechia, it actually fulfills four of the five conditions that that a country would need to do in order to adopt a euro. So, and one condition it doesn't meet is the fact that it still wants to keep its banking independent, aka the treasurer or the director of the national bank doesn't approve of it. But otherwise it is still quite a stable country. So I think it is fair to put it in B. And now we reach, yeah, Denmark. I was a little spaced out on the name there. Denmark is actually another A. I am very, well, I have to say, when it comes to the Nordic countries, I am very tempted to just shove them all in S. I might still eventually, uh, uh, because Denmark has a lot of things going for it. Has a stable middle class, a and some degree of economic and cultural vibrancy. It does still, there have been some right conservative or far right rumblings recently. Uh, however, Trump quelled them somewhat recently, at least as of the time of this video's production, but still earlier this year. And and I think if they realize and acknowledge their connection, they're on the right track. But until then they're stuck in eight. They have they have a lot of good things going for them, but they need that one thing that they need a little bit, that one extra thing that really keeps them on the straight and narrow. Estonia, perhaps the most digitized state apparatus that exists. I'm gonna say also goes in, yeah, putting it in A, above Belgium, above Finland, because, well, as I've already mentioned, it has a very digitized state apparatus, and also it otherwise has plenty of good things going for it. It is an honorary Nordic nation, so very fulfilling, and so very much deserving of this. Finland, Finland gets S. It is, say what you will about it, but there are many ways in which I find it to be the leader of Europe when it comes to how it handles its communication, how it handles its environment, how it handles its industry, and and all of that. There is a distinct acknowledgement of the accountability and the responsibility people have towards each other, at least from all of the news that I've been able to find from Finland, and that in turn makes me see it as a very desirable place to live. Uh, it would be more desirable if I spoke Finnish, but that's a different question. For now, it makes it to S tier. I'm actually think okay, I've actually moved Denmark a little bit ahead. France, France should consider itself lucky for still making it an A tier, because you've been flirting with Le Pen and her ilk for far far too long. But otherwise you are a pretty a pretty good place to live in. I will say that. You got uh, good social programs. You got a sizable culture and history that you know how to emphasize. Transit, I understand, is quite well. You are pretty much a forerunner in terms of European high-speed rail with the TGV. So I will say that this placement is well deserved. Georgia. Georgia, in many ways, is actually quite similar to Armenia. like they both have a long history. They are both nestled between. Uh, Sorry about that. They are both located somewhat unpleasantly. They both have they both have decent landscapes. Um, that being said, I am a little bit more tempted to put it. Mm, I'm gonna put it here. I think it's fair to put Bulgaria over here. And then Bosnia goes. Putting Croatia here, yeah. Yeah, Croatia being in the EU does make does make a lot of difference. Uh, anyway, is this what I want? Is this what I want to do? Maybe I'll shift them around later eventually. Germany. Well, I already spent an hour talking about its about its constituent parts uh, and all the things I like about them, and what makes the country interesting and desirable as a whole. But I don't think it's S tier just yet. I will put it. No. I'll still put it. I'll put it under Estonia, but still over Denmark. Because because its projection ability, its economic robustness is still somewhat solid. And I say that despite being despite being currently unemployed, I still acknowledge that there is a industrial potential when it comes to this country, and it is that level of potential that I think deserves to be acknowledged. And then when you also consider the fact that they actually use their potential to at least to some degree to make it to make the country better when it comes to social investments and stuff like that. They very effectively deserve to be an A. If they did it a little bit better, or perhaps but by a little bit I don't really mean 10%. I mean something like if they did it 15% better or above that, they might make it in the S tier. But for now they are just A. Greece. Mm, for a long time it was the easternmost member of the uh, European Union. It basically just became that because because they wanted to, uh, because probably because the uh, European Community of Coal and Steel, wanted to save the country from the Eastern Bloc. Beyond that, however, it has been. Hmm, Also, it was an early adopter of the euro, and that that didn't pan out too well for them about 15, 20 years ago, if you'll recall. Uh, Beyond that, however, I'm gonna say it's a nice place, and uh, uh, it's geographically nice. Its culture is, well, you don't really need me to talk about Greek culture, though a lot of that is very much carried by ancient Greece. Modern Greece is perhaps not as interesting, not as impactful as it could have been. So, and also when you consider the fact that some parts of that some of the most vocal parts of the European far right have been active within Greece. Yeah, no, maybe not fair to put him there. I'm gonna say this. I will definitely shift these around for a while. Hungary, member of the European Union since 2004, has in all fairness uh, utilized its connection quite well. In the sense that it managed to very much modernize and very much uh, emphasize itself. In recent times, however, with when you notice how exactly its current governance decided to consolidate itself, Yeah, I'm sorry. You're pretty much below below the rest of the EU nations, except for Cyprus. So okay, so that's it with Hungary. Iceland, part of the European Economic Area. Uh, yeah, used to be a hotbed for tourism. Now it's turning into a hotbed for investment. It is, and also it is the most gender egalitarian country in the world. There are still there are still some kinks that you have to iron out, at least as far as at least as far as I've been able to tell. But they are but they are up there and they are doing they're doing quite well. They're also very environmentally friendly, but then again they have an environment that allows them to it allows them to take advantage of that. Still the fact that they do actually take advantage does speak plenty in their favor. So I'm gonna say, yeah, it's either A or S really. For now, however, it's high A. Ireland. It's pretty. It has a messy history, though one that would still perhaps be interesting to explore. Another, it's another EU tax haven, that which is which is quite unfortunate. Um, However, hmm, what else can I say about this? What else can I say about this country? I don't really know. I don't really have a lot else that I know about it, except for its cultural identity, which is quite solid. Uh, yeah, C tier for now. Italy, controversial statement. Italy also gets, goes here. It is above, it is above Bulgaria, but I'm still gonna put Italy in C tier because, well, I don't know. I don't find it to be as interesting as it could be. It does have, it does have projection power, but that mainly comes from being from it being the core of the former Roman Empire, and also the Catholic Church. So, so, so in that sense, while it does use that, and from what I've been able to see of Italy, because yeah, I've visited once or twice, actually four times now that I think about it. Um, so anyway, the point is they do actually, they do actually know how to emphasize what it is that they have, but I find myself less than impressed with what it is that they do outside of that. So for that reason, they make it to C tier. I don't care I don't care how groundbreaking their cuisine is, and or how influential. I still think they are a C tier nation. Kazakhstan. Okay, the fact that I badmouthed Kazakhstan earlier kind of bites me in the ass here. Um, I'm gonna say high end of D. I said high end of D. Good. Uh, for now at least. It is somewhat regrettable that when most people think Kazakhstan, they think, they think the Eastern European caricature made by a Zionist Jewish comedian, aka Borat. Borat being the caricature, not the comedian. However, I think they still have other things, plenty of other things going for them, in the way that they are, in the way that they are connected to everything else, and also some level of interest in terms of modern history, because Kazakhstan, for those who are unaware, was actually the last member of the Soviet Union. Yeah, it's got that other claim to fame going for it. But otherwise, I don't know. I still kind of see it as a D tier nation. Now we get to Latvia. Um, the third, is it the no, it's the second of the Baltic nations that I've mentioned so far, and and actually between them, I think Latvia is actually the one I know the least about. I know they struggle with I know they struggle with some degree of Russian influence, but they do have a way to, but they do have ways to counter that. Beyond that, well, they have the sea, but whether they have landscapes, I don't really know. Latvia may actually be one of the first, I know the Baltic nations as a whole have been the first to break away from from the Soviet Union. So in that sense, it is the anti-Kazakhstan, and then they entered the EU in a pretty sizable wave. And as far as I can tell, they've actually, and from what I recall, they actually use that quite well. So I'm gonna say middle middle of B for now. Yeah, right next to Austria. Liechtenstein. Not an EU member, if I recall correctly, but still part of the uh, European Economic Area, or in the sense that it can use the euro. It's got some interesting sites because it's very much nestled in the Alps, and what what else can I say about it? Not much actually. I'm gonna say low end of B or high end of C. I'm gonna say nah, I'm gonna put it right about here. I think that's a fine place for it to be. Lithuania. The third of the Baltic nations, and also again the one I know least about. I'm gonna say, low end of B, at least for now. Surprisingly, the bottom half of this list is oddly underpopulated. Anyway, now we got Luxembourg. Uh, Remember what I said that Belgium is actually was one of the blueprints of the European Union? Well, the actual blueprint was Benelux, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg. So an um, an international cooperation union between these three countries in particular, and and Benelux and Luxembourg in particular kind of has its has a lot of reputations when it comes to has a sizable reputation when it comes to its quality of life, GDP per capita, and stuff like that. Partly because it's owned by a lot of bankers, so it primarily does economic projection without, but so it doesn't really have it doesn't really in that sense have a particularly uh, perhaps balanced industrial sector. Um, but it yeah, but it does utilize its but it does utilize its funds quite effectively. So I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna put him above Czechia for now at least. Malta, the the smallest EU member, I believe. Its name actually derives from the word for honey. Again, if I recall correctly, and it has a deceptively deep history. Beyond that, however, I don't really know if there's much I can say about it. Is it better than Liechtenstein? Yeah, I'm gonna say so, marginally. But it's not more interesting than Italy. Moldova. Moldova or Moldavia? What's the what's the accepted English pronunciation? Still, I'm gonna still because my still because my origins are from its immediate vicinity or from the same cultural background. I'm gonna call it Moldova because fuck it. Uh, and Moldova kind of has a reputation of being a reputation that is somewhat similar to Albania in the sense that it is underdeveloped, and in the sense that it is that its leadership is very cliquey, as in it is very as in it's quite contained and very much focused more on yeah, and focused on uh, keeping itself stable and therefore maintaining a certain stratification that they benefit from. That has since been maybe not remedied, but touched upon by by the current governance and the current governance structure. It still has some ways to go. However, it is going quite effectively. I think it is. I think this is roughly where it. I think this is roughly where it ought to go. I'm gonna say but for now at least, I'm gonna say it's below Croatia. Next up, Poland. Poland, I think entered relatively late in the. Not sure if it entered in the '04 wave or perhaps a little bit earlier. But still, I've seen that it has used that. I've seen that it has used its entrance quite well. It is it is building up on itself, and it does. And also, it was one of the. And again, if I recall correctly, it was one of the most active voices against Soviet influence in the 80s. So like the so in that sense, the liberatory spirit of stuff like rock and roll and punk very much caught on to very much caught on to Poland. Unfortunately, Poland also happens to be a also happens to be one of the one of the black sheep of the European Union, along with Hungary, primarily for how it decides to mishandle some of the way its citizens are represented. But beyond that, I think it actually has more going for it in terms of in terms of its development capabilities. So I'm gonna put it above Hungary. Next up, we got I assume this is Montenegro, but in that case, oh no, wait, it's Monaco. This is Monaco. Fuck, Poland is right here. Okay, Monaco, you can go down. I'm gonna put Poland here. Now, time for you, Monaco. You're another tax haven. You're not part of the EU, but you are similarly to Andorra connected to, uh, connected to countries with a strong democratic tradition. However, you are a monarchy. And one thing that is, and one thing that has been occasionally speculated about you, is the fact that, is the fact that there is literally nothing to do there if you aren't rich. And I kind of have to say, yeah, that is, uh, that is kind of true. Not really sure if you should still go above Kazakhstan. Um, is this fair? No. I'm gonna put you here between between Armenia and Greece. Uh, admittedly, Monaco is perhaps a little bit more stable than these nations, but Monaco isn't, but Monaco doesn't have a lot of other attractions, whereas Greece and Armenia do. Okay, Montenegro, another breakaway state from the former, from the former Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Is it no? Or is it North Macedonia? Fuck, I actually don't know. No, this is North Macedonia, the sun. So this is Montenegro. Again, there isn't really much I know about it except that it's in the Balkans, so it's so it's probably, so it probably has some darkness going for it, going to it, especially, especially given it broke away from Serbia. But I don't know enough about about its other, uh, about the rest of it to really rank. So I'm gonna play it safe and put it here, lower end of C. Yeah, I think that's fair. Netherlands. The Netherlands actually goes. I am tempted. I am tempted to go. Yeah, I am tempted to go with with an S tier ranking. Primarily because they have, primarily because of personal mobility, and I don't just mean that in terms of bikes. I also mean that in terms of, in the sense that they have a quite expansive and well-developed public transit network as well. They have, and there's a there's soil reclamation, which which then, uh, which the Dutch do quite well. It is also surprisingly strong in terms of its economy and its industry. Uh, and by that I mean that it actually has like uh, centuries worth of experience with it. With things like this. There's a reason the Dutch disease carries that name, and also it was able to recover from that. So in that sense, I think it is worth. And in that sense, I think it is worth talking about it in quite high praise. Beyond that, no, I actually think it's still worth an S tier placement because there are, because there are plenty of uh, other other broader uh, other broader social conditions that it manages to that it manages to uh, establish quite well. Especially, also, it was the first nation to ever to ever legalize or to ever acknowledge or to ever recognize gay marriage on a nationwide level. So it very much has that going for it. Mm, then again, I don't know. It's kind of had some anti-immigrant slippages recently. So I'm tempted to put it back down in A tier, but for now it's S. North Macedonia. Slightly above Montenegro for many of the same reasons. Norway, uh, yeah, top of eight, top of eight for now. They have, they drink the most coffee per person. They read the most manga per person. They have a sovereign wealth fund that they actually, that they actually use in the, that they actually use in service of their people. So, so yeah, there are plenty of things that it does very well. Also, landscapes are are very well developed. If it had, if it had friendlier weather, then I think it would go, then I think it might go even higher. For now, however, it's top of A. Next up, Portugal. Portugal Portugal very much decriminalized every kind of narcotic, be it stimulant, be it uh, be it a calmant or whatever else. In order to better handle its situations. And also, I recently saw I recently saw a little bit uh, of a documentary, or rather, it was it was a YouTube video about its structure. But it was well produced, and I will say it was well sourced about how they about the impact of the Carnation Revolution on the uh, present the present Portuguese governance structure. There are some things I find myself disagreeing with when it comes to when it comes to how it was put together. but I can't, but I can't argue against its I can't argue against its effects. I think it actually does some. I think it actually does some things pretty well, to the point where Portugal is actually, Portugal is actually comparable to Spain, which and I have some pretty good things to say about Spain as well, more broadly. Uh, Beyond that, where do I put you? Thinking B. Which part of B though? Mm, yeah, I think this is fair. Or it's around Czechia level, at least for me. Romania, my birth country. This is gonna be quite wild because as a Romanian, I can I can very much say that we have a surprisingly very very colorful but underrepresented uh, level of history. Yeah, it's not for me to say that history is underrepresented when tourism is actually a huge segment, but a lot of that history is focused on certain parts of it. So there a lot of the history focus of the Romanian tourism industry, and admittedly of the education system as well, is very focused on specific moments of triumph. And actually, and actually, Romania's history is more broad and more colorful than that. And beyond that, I think some things that have already been touched upon on how there's been on how there is on how there are illicit and inappropriate uses of governmental power throughout the country. Um, the cuisine is decent. Yeah, I'm gonna say it is just decent. Sorry to all my fellow countrymen who like it a little bit more. Landscapes, on the higher end, I will have to say. Um, in terms of social services, it's getting there. Like as I've already said, there are illicit there's a lot of illicit power that and a lot of unsavory ways in which in which that influence is reflected, and that ultimately has fallback into how the ultimately has ramifications into how the rest of the nation is put together, and what it delivers. However, as I've been saying, it is actually getting better. So in that sense, I think it is fair to put it perhaps on the higher end of C. Is it better or worse than Bulgaria? Uh, for now, at least, I want to say better. There are lots of unknowns about Bulgaria that that I don't want to speculate on. So for now, I think this is the most appropriate place for it. 5, 6, 7. There are seven per row. 17. Yeah, Romania's in the top third of C. Russia's gonna be the first F of this video. Yeah, and also note I said first. It will not be the last. Like, yeah, they may have some decent services, but a lot of what really characterizes Russia, even outside of its war with Ukraine, is still very centralized around keeping around keeping the leader around keeping the leader and whatever and his supporters happy. It's a constant it's a constant push and pull between czar and boyars, uh, and the and the people are being pushed and pulled. That is while while there are occasionally some crumbs that are thrown uh, that are thrown Russia's way, and that are thrown to the that are thrown in the people's way, in the sense that they have some level uh, of services, and I'm primarily talking about transit here. Uh, really a lot of it is more really the relationship is is still primarily adversarial, and that ultimately does ramificate on the living conditions being overall being overall quite bad. That's funnily enough why Russians always have dash cams, so they can film police in case they in case police has some unsavory intentions towards them. Uh, and while they do have some level of presence, that is simply because they want to compete with uh, that is because they want to compete with the the rest of the developed nations of Europe, which it sees itself as being. Even though it's not really developed, simply has it is simply broad enough to have influence over them. But beyond that, it is it is an F tier nation. San Marino, the only country in the first world to have a coalition government of socialists and communists. Yes, really. And it did so during the Cold War. But I guess it wasn't a. And I guess the Soviet Union decided it wasn't a uh, notable enough place where they would want to prop it up. Also, the fact that it's surrounded by Italy would perhaps also discourage some level of some level of influence. Beyond that, San Marino is another one of those places that can claim a huge legacy or a very long lineage. So in that end, so yeah, it's got that. So therefore it has an interesting history, and I don't think it is that much worse off than Italy. At least I would have heard about it. So it is at the very least comparable to Italy. Would I actually put it higher? Mm, not right now. I might move it up, but not right now. Serbia. Serbia unfortunately goes in this, goes right here in the lower end. I'm not sure if it's the. I think it's pretty safe to say it's, yeah, high end of D, high end of D for now. It does still have its, does still have its own authoritarian flirtations, or uh, yeah, it has a lot of, it's safe to say, nationalist sympathies that are used quite ruthlessly to maintain, by its leadership to maintain itself. And whenever leadership tries to maintain itself with any kind of illicit means, that is typically through means like that. The average person doesn't typically have pretty good conditions. So for that reason, Russia gets D. This is Slovakia. Slovakia, which really got the short end of the stick when Czechoslovakia split. So for that reason alone, it'll be below Czechia. Beyond that, however, I don't really know enough about. I don't really know enough about Slovakia to where I would want to. Uh, uh, where I can make a more accurate assessment. Is it still a B nation? No, I don't think so. Uh, I is this? Yeah, slightly above Romania. Yeah, I think this is fair. Slovenia, another somewhat recent addition of the EU, and by somewhat recent I mean 2004. Um, if I recall correctly, it is currently well known for being the birthplace of Slavoj Žižek and a former Yugoslav republic. What else? What else is there to say? What else about this nation makes it notable? Oh, it's the fact that it has the most first level national subdivisions, with 212. But that's because those 212 are all basically municipalities, townships, or cities. There are no there are no counties that are identified as such. Though I would not be surprised if there weren't some there weren't some kind of historic lineages that some historic uh, divisions that are recognized. It's small, but I wouldn't but while it may be a small country, I wouldn't rule it out. Um, that being said, I think yeah, sure. Dumb luck allows it to have allows it to have plenty of uh, allows it to have plenty of strong uh, living conditions, uh, even in spite of a more checkered past. Next up, we got Spain. Spain, which has risen quite dramatically recently, and even beyond that, it has a significant degree of cultural projection by being by being a sizable tourism destination. Admittedly, some of that is facilitated by Latin America, but Spain itself still has its still has its merits, still has its history, and it actually has plenty of interesting developments. Enough to where I would put it in B. I would put it in. I'm not gonna put it in A. There are still some conditions it doesn't meet. I'm gonna say yeah, high end of B for now. Sweden. Sweden, I'm gonna say high end of A or middle of S. What do we actually know about Sweden? Well, there are the Sweden Democrats, aka Sweden's flirtation with the far right. Not necessarily, not particularly not which is not a great position for them to be in. Otherwise, though, they have a pretty strong economic sector, and also one that very distinctly, very cleverly acknowledges the uh, and that acknowledges the value and contribution of individuals. So for that reason, I think so it is fair to put them quite high. Though I have noticed that they do have some particularly weird deviations. Beyond that, however, no, I'm gonna say this. It's like putting them here in S tier is roughly fine. Next up, we've got Switzerland. Switzerland is pretty much the quintessential. Is it a quintessential B nation? No, I think it's actually a little bit better than that. Sweden is really Sweden is really weird if you actually think about it, because it is a because it is constructively uh, it is a constructively conservative nation, but it doesn't really have any of the traps uh, of a of a conservative structure. It is of a of any typical conservative haven. While it is while it is very strongly decentralized to the point that its official name is actually the Helvetic Confederacy, but it still has but it still pretty much has mandatory military service, and also the degree of freedom that each individual canton of Switzerland has is outstanding. Like one of them only legitimized women's suffrage in 1990, which is crazy. Beyond that, however, it does actually. I will say it does. I will say it is a strong networking hub, as in it is not a part of the EU, but it has so many unilateral members, bilateral agreements with the EU that that it is, that it functionally is. It has a lot of the same, benefits, uh, and also some that are very distinctive to it. And I'm not just talking about the and there are landscapes and I'm not just talking about the landscapes. Also talking about how effectively it can mobilize itself in the event of in the event of a variety of catastrophes. And however, it does have its more its more checkered past, and also the fact that that if I recall correctly, it does have a reputation for everything being expensive for for a variety of reasons. So I'm gonna say, yeah, I think this place is here under no above Andorra, but under Spain. That's a good place for it. Turkey. Under better conditions, Turkey would be in the C tier, but as it stands, I think it's above Serbia. Like again, Turkey actually has plenty of things going for it, and part of that is through its ability to project power. Uh, Part of that is because it has a uh, is because of its strategic position, which it has utilized quite effectively throughout its time, managing to grant itself some level of prestige. Before that, however, when it comes to the and also when you look at its history, there's actually plenty going on there in terms of the Anatolian Peninsula being somewhat of a meeting point between South Europe and West Asia, and all of the various cultures that have intersected through that space. So you got plenty of so you have Greek influences, you have Hittite influences, then you have uh, then you have the and then was part of the Roman and Byzantine Empire for empires for a long time. Then you got the Ottomans, and all the way, and then you got modern Turkey. Modern Turkey, which had a very particular regime when it comes to its when it comes to how it keeps itself steady. One that its current president has unfortunately has unfortunately very much screwed over, and very much shifts towards a more traditional, aka uh, aka uh, destabilized model of model of society. So if it were under a different president, it actually has the potential to be to fully be to be a B tier nation. But as it stands, it goes in D. Ukraine. A lot of Eastern Europe kind of has this weird vibe of centrism, or in the sense that it sees both the in the sense that it both sees the EU with its many regulations as a dictatorship, but then also sees Russia with its power projection as a different shade of dictatorship. So in many ways they equate them and see themselves as the unnecessarily as the happy political medium, because they're not because they're neither neither bullies nor are they dorks. That's kind of the weird that's kind of the weird idea that that is embodied by that is embodied in uh, Eastern European geopolitics. And Ukraine is arguably the worst offender of that, because it very, because it, as well, it does have some strong cultural ties to Russia and the Russian Empire. It still sees itself as, it still sees itself as distinct of that, and and that you have to do things in the sense that you have to do things on its own terms, and it doesn't acknowledge any other terms existing, and existing outright mocking some of them. So because of that they are, I'm gonna say, I think, maybe the lower half of C. Where do I put them? I'm gonna say I'm gonna say they're below Hungary. Also, Greece does not deserve to be here. I think, yeah. Yeah, okay, this is a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, well, there isn't really much I can. Beyond that, there isn't really much I can say about. Uh, uh, there isn't really much I can say about Ukraine. So really, is really the because really what its current president has been doing ever since ever since the war began, where he went around Europe talking about how he is defending uh, how he's defending his country, and therefore the autonomy upon which he uh, uh, and the legal autonomy upon which modern states are built. That is really the most open to the world the country has been. So therefore, I think it deserves its place in uh, in the lower half or lower third of C. The UK is, where do I put you? I think this is a fair enough placement. The UK had a lot of good things going for it, but it squandered all of them. Because of Brexit. Excuse me just a moment. See, there's a pop-up that I closed. Now, as I was saying, the UK had a lot of good things going for it, but it unfortunately squandered them all because of uh, some of that is through Brexit. Some of it is through the conditions that ran before it that made Brexit possible. It's it still views itself because there are lots of ways in which it considers itself uh, Britannia, as in the guarantor of civilization, and therefore a first among equals within uh, within European powers, if not outright the greatest of them. And while they had some advantages, while they had some good things going for them in terms of in terms of the NHS, which is really which for a long time was actually among the uh, best national healthcare systems, best or rather the best healthcare providers of its kind. It has since it has since fallen out of favor because no one's putting the money towards it. And hell, these days the UK actually, there are parts of the UK that are poorer than, the poorest parts of the UK are actually poorer than the poorest parts of some C tier nations. So yeah, so because of that, they really they really uh, put themselves down here because a lot of they wanted to, as they really fell into the neoliberal uh, trickle down trap where they assume that where they assume no regulation would mean larger capital flow, but instead it meant larger capital concentration. Because without regulations, people just do whatever they want, and what they want, surprisingly, isn't capital flow, or rather they want capital, rather they want themselves to become capital sinks, and the people with resources to do so will very much do exactly that. Will very much become capital sinks in whatever way it takes, and therefore take away anything that that capital could have flown in, and therefore anything that capital could have flown into in order to improve, falls away. That is how, and that very much characterizes the downfall of downfall of the UK, which is in many ways mirrored by the downfall the US went through. Still, it does have some advantages to it. So for that reason, I'm not putting it among the C tier nations. I think it is still fair to put it with the B tier ones. And last but not least, Vatican City. Yeah, another F tier nation. It is literally the only theocracy in Europe. Like, what else could I do with it? Like, it has some history, but it is otherwise entirely dependent on the fact that there is a huge organization of a huge worldwide organization of supporters outside of it, keeping it keeping it intact and keeping it functioning to to whatever extent that is. This really isn't a country. This is this is a corporation headquarters more than and therefore and for that reason it very much deserves its placement right here. Okay, and now I've been rambling for long enough that I that I ran out of things to say. This is okay. I can't really. I'm gonna have to shrink the. I'm gonna have to shrink the page in order to showcase the full tier list. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Surprisingly, S tier isn't just filled up by the Scandinavians. Is there anything here I want to change though? There's an ambulance driving by. Well, thanks for filling the void while I figure this out. Oh no, wait, it's not an ambulance, it's a fire truck. It's actually an entire fire convoy. Somewhat ironic for there to be a fire when there's, when it's raining outside, but whatever. No, I guess that's pretty much it. This is my... Yeah, this is my tier list. I'm done. Thank you for your attention. If you've enjoyed it, well then please like the video. Maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the tier or to any of my suggestions for how these for how the various nations should be ranked, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe, and ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a primary channel, so to speak, where I talk about the print medium and selected works therein. A link to which you can find in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. If you are less than interested in my thoughts on the print medium, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog, where aside from the occasional quasi-political discussion I get into, I I primarily talk about television and cinema, in the form of pitches, in the form of overviews, in the forms of reviews, in the form of rewrites, really, really that kind of thing. And even beyond that, I pretty much talk about whatever crosses my mind. So whatever could be of interest to you, you might just find it in in my backlog. If none of what I said sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.